Vedandasya gyanam janashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam jena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Shrishtam Manumapi Satyaputram Matra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajamuruparim Matharim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivaram Maho Radhika Madhavasam Prapto Yasya Pratitha Kripaya Shri Gurum Tamnatasme Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvyaiva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nikhila Shriti Male Ratnamala Diti Nirajita Padapankajanta Haji Mukta Kulairupashyamanam Paritasram Harinam Samshrayami Anarpitacharim Chirat Karunayavatirna Kalaham Samarpaitamannatojvalarasam Bhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundaradi Kadamba Sandipita Sada Hridaye Khandarish Purato Vasachinandanaha Janulambita Bujjo Kanakavadata Sankirtanai Kapitaro Kamalaya Taksham Vishwambaradhyavaro Jugadharamapalam Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataro Ladini Shakti Sarupaya Gauranga Suhridaya Cha Bhakta Shakti Pradhanaya Gadadhara Namastate He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Radhe Vrindavanadishi Kanunamrita Vahini Kripaya Nijapadabja Dasyanmayam Pradiyatam Bhaktya Vihinaya Paradhalakshay Kshiptaschakamaditarangamadhye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapanam Brinde Namaste Charanarvindam Vrinde Namaste Charanarvindam Shri Sachidanand Gaur Hari Ki Jai Shri Harinam Prabhu Ki Jai Samavit Bhakta Vrind Ki Jai Gaur Premanand Hari Hari Bol Pranam to all. Welcome. Thank you so much for your presence today, your active presence, and joining us in our weekly satsang, quest and exploration. A quest for authenticity, for sincerity, for honesty, and increasing our attachment to being honest with one another and living our life as transparently as we can, so we can be seen for who we are, and we can choose a life of being seen for who we are, which means for all that we can be, and relate to each other accordingly. That sounds like heaven, right? That's the idea, to invoke heaven on earth. It all begins here, or it begins nowhere. So it begins here and now, and in how we relate to each other, including ourselves. So welcome for that. Welcome and thank you for that commitment of active presence and commitment to, joining the circle in that, with that hope, with that aspiration. May we be transparent, honest, vulnerable with one another, with reality in itself. So I'm back in another ashram. After last week, I remember I was in Washington, D.C. It was a little bit of a shorter meeting as I had another engagement there. So now back to the countryside after returning from the big city, which was beautiful experience, great contrast, but beautiful experience nonetheless. And here it's a beautiful experience in its own way. So yeah, happy to be here with all of you. And as usual, as we have begun a few weeks ago, if we allow me, we can begin by sharing a short excerpt from my forthcoming book, Evolution in Divine Love, which will be officially launching on July 5th. That's a Saturday, so that will be our satsang for that day, exactly from now 4 weeks. So hope to see you there as well, for sure. We'll do some special meeting for that. So meanwhile, let's share some appetizer before the full meal. This is a section from chapter 3 of the book. The book has 4 chapters on the ever-evolvingness of love, God, soul, and matter. So the third one has to do with the love, the souls. The name of the chapter is Mapping the Soul's Unbroken Potential. So this is a small section that I like to share with you. Of course, there are things that we share. You may be familiar with what I will read now, hopefully, but we can never get too familiar. So we can always discover something new in between the lines. And let's pray for that. So it says like this, before turning, of course, to the raised hands that are already there. Those deeply immersed in love have already reached their desired destination, yet recognize that there is no final endpoint as love endlessly expands. This understanding is central to the Bhakti tradition, which teaches that we have already arrived at our ultimate destination from the very beginning. I'll repeat just in case. Fasten your seatbelts if it's required. We have already arrived at our ultimate destination from the very beginning. Why? Because the practice of bhakti exists solely for the sake of further bhakti, with nothing beyond it. Bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya, says the Bhagavad. Bhakti comes from bhakti, and bhakti takes to further bhakti. As Srila Siddhar Maharaj beautifully expressed. So now comes a quote from our guardian of devotion, one of the many ones. The capacity of our cultivation will be increased. As we serve, a greater capacity and willingness to serve will be given to us in remuneration. In this way, our dedicating principle will be increased again and again. End of the quote. In essence, we are already participating in what we aspire to do for eternity, serving in love. Thus, we are already there, with no need to strive or journey elsewhere. Any spiritual experience that evokes the feeling that I could do this forever affirms that we have truly touched the essence of our practice. I hope you've had some of those glimpses at some point. I could be eating halava forever. For sure, that one, right? You know, we are on the same page. A little bit more beyond that as well, hopefully. Last paragraph. Paradoxically, bhakti is marked by constant evolution, meaning we will never fully arrive as love unfolds infinitely, offering ever deeper experiences of devotion. Ultimately, life is not about reaching a destination, but about continually embracing the journey of further arrival. So that's what came today to share with you. This is a brief excerpt from chapter 3 of the book on this notion of how the potential of the soul plays itself out in this unique way of further unfolding, eternal expansion, but at the same time, we already are there. From day one of bhakti, we are introduced into the practice, and the practice is the goal unto itself. The means is the good, non-different from the goal in one sense. Bhakti takes to bhakti. So if from day one you are doing bhakti, you're already doing on day one what you will want to do on day 16,108 on eternity. You want to do bhakti. So we are blessed with such a prospect from day one. So I think it's very important, in my personal opinion, and how it plays out in my own practice, to embrace this type of framework, right? It's all about the framework. It's all about sambandha. It's all about how you orient yourself in the journey. If we have a healthy orientation to the journey itself will be exciting, pleasurable, always new, surprising, full of awe and wonder. But if there is a toxic, distorted orientation to the journey becomes torture. The journey becomes pressure. The journey becomes fear, intimidation, an evacuation plan, competition, worthiness contest, you name it. That's why Sambandha is so important. Sambandha means to have the proper orientation, how to approach the path, which with perspective, with which attitude, with which hope, and with which understanding of the grace that is given to us from day one. So we can engage in bhakti, we can engage in a life of divine love in a ways that is sustainable, challenging enough, gives us eternal prospect from growth, exciting prospect to embrace the here and now, and enough gratefulness and enough sense of achievement in one sense, in a healthy way of, okay, oh, from day one I'm receiving the gift of eternity. I'm already doing what I want to do forever. So I do not need to go somewhere else. I just need to continue arriving to where I already are. I'm already in bhakti. I need just to continue to arrive to bhakti in ever deeper dimensions. There's no end to that bottomless ocean. So in the end of the day, bhakti is a journey of further arrival. It's not so much a journey of leaving, rejecting whatever you have, wherever you are, but going deeper. Eho bahya aggi kaha ar, as Mahaprabhu will say to Ramananda Roy, go deeper. Okay, you got there, great. But tomorrow, that's a level of superficiality that you need to go deeper. And today's perfection is tomorrow's imperfection. As Bhaktivinoda Thakur will put it. But we don't need to get neurotic today. If we arrive at the type of perfection today, we don't need to get neurotic today about, oh, but tomorrow that will be already imperfection. That will be a conversation we'll have tomorrow. You can today celebrate the perfection that knocked on your door, the degree of perfection that is trying to embrace you. And tomorrow, by embracing that embrace, that will naturally, organically take you to the next level of embrace, the next level of accepting reality on a deeper level, the next level of perfection or imperfection, however you would like to call it. So anyhow, some reflections in connection to this particular excerpt from part 3 of the soul's unbroken potential. So we are units of potential, Tatastha Shakti. And that potential under the shelter of bhakti is unbroken, endless, ever evolving, ever expanding. So hopefully we can all have a glimpse and share an experience of such an ever exciting prospect we are all sharing here, despite all. Okay, so we'll continue now. I'm seeing 4 raised hands, so I'm so sorry to having kept you for 15 minutes with your hands raised. I'm happy that it's a digital one, so you're not getting any stiffness in your muscles or something. So we'll begin with Jugal Kishore Prabhu. Please, you can unmute yourself and bring your offering to the table. More than welcome.
Hare Krishna. Hi, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Nice to see you. Thank you, Maharaj. That was mind-blowing substance in that little what you just shared, and I'm seeing how it can connect to some things that have been on my mind recently. So I want to just offer something that I heard Father Richard Rohr say, and then some reflection on that, and then maybe that will lead to a question. But I can't give you an exact reference. It was in a YouTube video, and it was really kind of in passing that he made this statement. So I don't think he expands on this as one of his big, I don't know, teachings, but he made the statement indirectly to the audience that was listening, like, and don't forget that something is pornographic when it is an incomplete picture.
Something's pornographic where it is an incomplete picture?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And that had me light up.
Yeah.
I shared some comments about it with the Brotherhood Sanctuary, and there was some very nice response and dialogue about it. It made me think, how can you ever really have a complete picture? You know, what to speak of, let's say, a perfect picture, especially if the nature of everything and everyone is always changing and evolving and expanding. Can you ever have a perfect picture, or are we all constantly stuck in this cycle of objectification, where the other person is simply just an object for our passive consumption or our use? I don't think that's the case, but you know, I connect that like some things that you had said about really seeing, right? Really seeing each other. Let me pose the question. So, how can you have a complete or perfect picture of the absolute, let alone yourself or anyone else? That's all.
Okay, thank you. Can you repeat one more time the quote from Father Richard, please?
Yes. Something is pornographic when it is an incomplete picture.
Wow. Incredible. And of course, I can see how for some people it's like what he meant by that, why the word pornographic in between incomplete picture. But of course, knowing Richard a little bit, being familiar with his way of teaching, that's a great way of putting it. I really appreciate that particular framing. I'm somehow reminded of a quote that I share in Radical Personalism, not from Father Richard himself, but by someone who wrote the foreword to one of Richard Rohr's books, the one who wrote the book on the, how do you say in English? The example that I sometimes give when your subconscious is like a what? Like the place where you throw all the stuff in your house. Like Teresa.
A shed.
The shed. Okay, so there's this movie called The Shed, but there is a book based on that movie. So the one who wrote that book, basically, he said a quote that I share in Radical Personalism, which says something like, he says, bad theology, and I think this is connected to your point, bad theology is like pornography, the imagination of a real relationship without the risk of one, right? So bad theology, it's like pornography. Pornography is, it seems that I'm connected, it seems that there is intimacy, it seems that there is all connectedness, intimacy, all that stuff, but there's no risk. There's no actual connection, it seems. So bad theology is, I have an idea of God, but it's on the distance, it's distorted, it's not willing to take some risk, willing to enter into outside of my comfort zone. So bad theology is like pornography, he will say. And here you are saying something is pornographic. I mean, you are quoting Richard Rohr, when it is not, the full picture it's not complete, it's not perfect, whatever that may be. So I think that's the same spirit, right? Because sometimes we, of course, limit pornography to just consuming pornography, but the spirit of pornography and why we will say that's not healthy, I will say there is no commitment, there is no sacrifice, there is no risk involved, but it gives the illusory sense of, again, intimacy, connectedness, all the things that we are starving for and that we are desperately looking for. So for me, the absurdly high rates of pornography in nowadays world indirectly speaks about that. Indirectly speaks about how thirsty we are for intimacy, how thirsty we are for connectedness. And of course, there's the paradox, because all this pornography is accessed through social media, which in one sense seems to be providing us like never before a global sense of connectivity, but at the same time it's creating so much isolation that people isolated through that same device is looking through that same device, some experience, some illusion, in this case, illusory experience of connectedness and intimacy through pornography or other things as well, right? So that's how, of course, I don't want to speak for Richard here, but I think he's referring to that, right? Something is pornographic when it's giving you a partial picture of reality, an uncommitted approach to things. Now, if I approach a relationship, any of you as a person, without willingness to commit myself, without willingness to risk, without willingness to do any sacrifice, I'm not getting the real picture of who you are, of who I am, of what's a relationship. So in that sense, it's partial, it's distorted, it's pornographic, if we may want to use that term. It's from a place of, from a comfort zone, right? I'm not willing to step outside of what's unsettling, but that's where every relationship can actually happen, right? So that will be a first part of my whatever reflection on your points, trying to clarify what I think we are talking about here by pornographic. And I think it's a very practical, very insightful word, though, again, it may refer to something else for most people. If we are able to clarify what we are talking about here, it gives a good point. And it gives also a deeper understanding into those who may have problems with pornography. And that's a whole separate conversation, but I know that many people have problems with pornography. Many people in spiritual communities, in the Gaudiya Vaishnava communities, not only men, especially men probably, but also there are higher and higher rates of women consuming pornography. I was horrified recently. I was in India, recently, a few months ago, half a year ago, and some friend me there told me some of the statistics of the rise of pornography there, and it was like almost 80% of all the adult population in India was consuming pornography, and 1/3 were women, right? So again, not to stigmatize anyone, just to understand what's going on here. In one sense, the problem is not pornography. Pornography is just the symptom of what we are trying to do to cope with the actual problem, to deal with the actual lacking, which is, again, isolation, lack of sense of belonging, lack of sense of community, family, fragmentation, all these type of things that we know are ramping and growing in this world. So pornography and other things are symptoms for me of what needs to be addressed, actually, right? It's not so much, oh, you are consuming porn, you're such a bad person, you shouldn't be doing that, you should feel terrible about you. Sometimes we can go in that direction, but actually it's like, oh, I can see you are actually thirsty for connectedness. You are starving for intimacy and belonging. So how can we provide that? And how can we invoke the proper positive food, so to say? So that's on one side, right? Again, so many conversations inside the conversation. But it seems that your main question was like, okay, but if reality is ever evolving, how much we can have a final, fully perfect picture of things? And again, there's this whole conversation that I address in a whole section in my book about perfection. No, the title of the section, I think, is perfection a fixed maximum? And of course, the reply is no. No, perfection is not that you reach this number, this maximum, that's it, game over. But it's an ever-evolving phenomenon. So, but at the same time, there's place to speak about. You can have very distorted pictures of reality. You mentioned this idea of learning to see. And our tradition, when they refer to sages, they use terms like rishi. No, rishi means seer. It's interesting. He's a seer. It doesn't mean that he's seen angels and lights of colors or having like psychedelic hallucination. It's just they are seeing reality for what it is. Bhagavad Gita refers to the guru as such, a tattva darshan. Tattva darshan means someone who is having darshan of tattva. Tattva means reality. So someone who is being seen by reality and allowing to be seen, and therefore seeing things for what they are. So we could define that as a form of baseline perfection, sobriety. No, you are not filtering and projecting fear, prejudice, unresolved stuff into the environment. You are confronting reality for what it is. On that foundation, there is no end to how much that can be unfolded and expanded. So I will say that when Richard said this idea of something is pornographic when it's not the full picture, the bigger picture. It has to do more with when we approach reality, relationships, people, God, ourselves, anything and everything, from a place of not willingness to do sacrifice, not willingness to be committed. And again, we are not condemning anyone by saying that. We are just saying that's something that needs to be addressed and solved, right? If I'm approaching life, people, myself, relationships with fear, without the willingness of doing sacrifice, of leaving my comfort zone, my certainty, I'm not willing to commit. Okay, why? Why I'm not able or willing to do that? And then we can have a conversation on that, because we need to have those conversations. That's what prevents us from any genuine connection with reality and with everyone. And again, that's where I feel isolated. That's where I feel disconnected. And that's where I resort to who knows what to cope with that. So many things to say. Yeah. As I trigger you with what I read in the beginning, now you're triggering me with that one-liner, mind-blowing one-liner from our dear Richard. Incredible. He has so many of those. So that's for me like the landmark of genius people. Like they are just casually throwing a one-liner that keeps your head spinning for a few lifetimes. And they just saw that like casually, like as a footnote, and they continue talking about the main theme. So it's like, this guy has some content to share with the world, right? So does it help, Jugal? I don't know. It helped me. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a rich line for sure. When you were when you reference reality as tattva, that's the reference point for any picture at all, whether complete, incomplete, it kind of made me think of like the frame of reference, like a video, like the video camera, you have to back up, you have to zoom out a little bit to be able to see more of the truth. And maybe that like you're describing kind of the passive, like the willingness to do that.
Yeah.
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 One of the things that one of the brothers said was like within a committed relationship, because there's the pragmatic element of that statement too, that in the committed relationship, not including God in the middle is an incomplete picture. And then the relationship is definitely pornographic. If it doesn't include the pillar of reality in the middle, then what is it? It doesn't matter if it involves sex or not. It's still pornographic.
And I will take the other turn as well. If your relationship with God doesn't include everyone else, it's pornographic in its own way as well. Right? Because I mean, what you say is totally true, but maybe it's the most obvious way to go. And yeah, of course, but then you have to analyze from the other perspective. When it's between God and me, and everyone else is out of the picture, is another way of saying the same thing from the other perspective. It's equally a problem like the other one. Because again, when we say tattva or reality, which is interesting because how the Vedanta expresses that, use that term, says tattva, reality, and then defines God, the divine, the absolute, but everything is included within that divine existence. So when we say reality, we are talking about everything integrated, included, no? Advaigyan, as Ilya Delia will say, I love that expression, reality is undivided wholeness. No, that's a way we can speak about how reality looks like, undivided wholeness. The problem is we lose sight of that, and we create fragmentation, division, and pornographic approaches to things, divisive, partial, however you like to call them. But yeah, thank you. And I appreciate your point that you made of the zooming out, because we were talking about becoming seers of reality. Sometimes to see something for what it is, you need to gain some perspective and take some step back. And we call that detachment, actually. Detachment. Detachment is not indifference. Detachment is not rejection. Detachment is I take enough distance from something to see that thing for what it is, so I can approach it for what it is. But first I need to know what it is. It's like the example I give always. If my hand is too close to my eye, I lost sight of my hand. There's too much zoom in. So I need zoom out. Oh, enough, not too much distance that I lose sight of that. If it's too zoom out, I lose sight. If it's too much zoom in, I lose sight. Enough middle point. Okay, I'm saying it for what it is. Now I can approach it accordingly. So that's detachment. I take a distance, but not running, not escapism, not an uncommitted escape from reality, but I take distance from reality to actually gain a more accurate picture of reality, and then reapproach it with commitment, with intimacy, with connectedness, with love. For me, all that implies becoming a seer of reality. It's not just about zooming in, because as we were talking in DC some days back, in some situation, if you zoom in too much, you lose sight of everything else that's going on, and it can become even unbearable. Try to think for a moment. I don't know what's going on in Gaza, and zoom in there, zoom in. At one point, you are going crazy. It's too much, and you lost sight of everything else, and it seems that that's the only thing that is there. So in order to deal with that objectively, you may need to zoom out, not to the point of losing sight of that situation, but to see that situation in the broader picture of other things that are going on, and then trying to see the whole picture. Again, we are talking about here seeing. So what's the frame? What's the context? What's the perimeter? What's going on inside? What's our place in it? Without having to escape, deny, not see something, but also without becoming overtly over-identified, zooming in something to the point of losing sight of everything else. That can happen also. Yeah. Oof. That was a wild ride, Jugal Kishore. Thank you for inviting us to that. And since we are talking about all this commitment, no? It's talking about pornography as the opposite of commitment, intimacy, and connection. I will share with you some news now, guys. I'm doing a new experiment. I already started it in my satsang in Spanish. So those of you who speak Spanish, probably none of you already know. So probably none of you know. And what I'm doing is that instead of doing the 15-minute breakthrough rooms at the end, we are doing small 5-minute breakthrough rooms in between the sessions, in between the questions, to try new dynamics. It will be with the same group throughout every single meeting, but we'll try that. And also you will be invited to exercise conciseness, because it will be 5 minutes, but we'll do it like 3 times. So it will be basically the same amount with the same group, but divided in 3 chunks. And the idea is to share some reflections connected to whatever we are talking in every specific term. So now we are talking about this topic of pornography as a partial approach to reality, and uncommitted, and what's behind that. So please have 5 minutes to share between all of you, what does this mean to you here and now? So Bhaktarasa will invite you to that. Those who for some reason feel willing to enter into the room, or you prefer to go to the bathroom or to eat or drink something, no problem. Take those 5 minutes. I don't want anyone to feel forced or uncomfortable, as much as I would like everyone to be sharing between one another. But if you prefer not to enter this time, also you can take the prompt and do it yourself by yourself. No, that's a way of committing to the idea. So let's join 5 minutes and see you in 5 minutes back in the main room, and we continue with the next question. Okay, I hope the experiment is going well so far. You survived the first 5 minutes. You look well. Everyone alive? Smiling? Yeah, I think we can continue pushing the boundaries a little bit. Okay, so what I'm realizing now is that it seems that when we go to these breakout rooms, the ones who raise their hand disappear now. I'm not seeing any raised hand now. So I don't recall who was the next one to honor the original order after Jugal Kishore. Yogamaya, I remember there were 3 more hands. Yogamaya, Rasangyan, Divyangan, I think. Which was the order? Who was first after Jugal Kishore? Yogamaya, says Manjwali. Okay, let's go to Yogamaya then. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Maharaj. Greetings, everybody. Hare Krishna. Well, I'm going to drag it up yet again. It's omnipotent. I can't get my head around Krishna not being omnipotent. I've looked at all the explanations or definitions of omnipotent, and it just seems to me it fits him all the time. I've come up with vibration, unlimited, supreme, divine, no beginning, no end, the consciousness of God, the power to become manifest, the potentiality for manifesting into actuality. It just seems to me, of course he is, he's omnipotent. He's the creator and we are the co-creators. He's given that gift to us. And in the discussions that we've had about this, you know, the Holocaust has come up. And, you know, if God was omnipotent, then he would have done something about it. But nobody ever brought up karma. You know, karma is something that you know, those people are going through something because of that, surely. Just as we go through things in our own lives. And terrible things have happened. I believe the Russians suffered much more during the Russian Revolution than or the suffering is worse or better. It's suffering. And miracles that never came up. I mean, you know, as many times people have experienced miracles in their lives that they couldn't just, you know, they couldn't explain. Again, I think this is God showing his omnipotence. Also, you know, within our theosophy or philosophy, you know, we have different levels of creation. There's the material and there's the spiritual. So there's different levels of his omnipotence. You know, Srimati Lakshmi said she couldn't even look at Lord Narasimha because he was just so terrible. Another aspect of his. So
to summarize, Yogamaya, for me to get the idea clear, is there a particular question, or is just
yes,
that
the question is when you came to the decision that you didn't think that God was omnipotent.
But first of all, who say that I came to that decision?
Well, we've had discussions about, or you've had discussions about it in the past.
Yeah, but
you said that you have agreed with some people that said that they didn't believe God was omnipotent.
Okay, let me clarify some things about that. Thank you for the question. Okay, that's a long conversation. And I will say something, of course, and it's an ongoing conversation as every other conversation. But just to clarify, and I'm about to publish my third book, but as I think I told you, I almost finished it writing the fourth one, which is on God's unconditional love. And the main part of that book is addressing the problem of evil, as sometimes it's called, or the problem of suffering. And in connection to that, how an omnipotent God, which is described also as all-loving, if it's omnipotent, if we take omnipotence as you can do anything and everything, why does he not prevent what could be preventable if you're all-loving and all-potent? So I write my longest chapter there, and I've had some podcasts recently with Thomas J. Oord, and the next podcast from my Free Radical podcast will be with exactly on this topic with one devotee called Adipurusha, who has a PhD on this topic, interestingly, on theodicy. It would be called Karma, what's the name? Free Will, Karma, and the Problem of Evil, something like that. No? Very soon in your local theater. So that's a long conversation, but in brief, I will say that I do not say that God is not omnipotent. I say that we need to nuance that what do we mean by that? We need to describe in detail, because we can, it's a word, right? Omnipotent. But if I may ask you now, what's omnipotent to you? What does it mean? Probably you won't tell all of you the same exact definition. So that's when we need to be clear about what we are talking about every time we use that word, right? So for some people, omnipotent means all powerful. Yeah. So what does it mean all powerful? It means like you can do absolutely everything, or you are more powerful than anyone else. And you can do a lot, but not absolutely everything, to the point that it becomes contradictory to who you are. Let me give you an example. If we will interpret omnipotent that, okay, Krishna can do absolutely anything and everything, so that means that he can stop being Krishna then. And probably will say, no, that cannot happen, Maharaj. Well, then he cannot do anything and everything. And it's okay. I'm not talking low about Krishna by saying that. You follow my point? Scriptures say God is love. So that's his intrinsic identity. So that means he cannot stop being love. Even if we dare to describe him as omnipotent, that doesn't mean that, oh, because I'm omnipotent, at any moment I can choose to stop being love. It's not possible. Thank God it's not possible. You follow my point? Like, for example, we as Jivas, we are souls, spiritual souls, eternal, no beginning, no end. It's something eternal has no beginning and no end, means we cannot stop existing at any point in time. So if we say, okay, Krishna is omnipotent, so in his omnipotence, he could make us stop existing at any moment. He cannot. Thank God. Though we may want that happens at some moments in our life, right? Put a pause to my existence, Krishna. But it's not possible. Krishna says in chapter 2 of the Gita, verse 16, I think, whatever exists can never stop existing. Do you follow where I'm trying to go? So when I'm saying, okay, still I choose to describe God as omnipotent, but many times those who argue against that mostly argue against this idea that God can do anything and everything. And in that anything and everything, there's the possibility of him doing things that are not only contradictory, but absurd. Again, God stopping existing, God stopping being love, God canceling the existence of the soul. That's not possible. Or in connection to what you mentioned, Yogamaya. And again, this is a complex situation regarding suffering, and of course the extreme example, classical one of the Holocaust, which I bring to this devotee that I have a conversation with. Again, Wednesday, 18th of June, I think will be the day. The Jivas, each of us, Jiva Goswami says there are 21 intrinsic qualities of the soul. He describes them in Paramatma Sandarbha, according to our tradition. One of them is Kartritva, another is Bhoktritva. We have experiential capacity and we have agency. I hope you get what do I mean by these terms. No, free will, let's use a simple term. Every soul is intrinsically endowed with free will. So we cannot not have free will. If free will be taken from us, we stop being a soul, because one of the defining qualities of the soul is free will. So again, we cannot say, oh, Krishna is omnipotent, so at any moment he can do whatever he likes and cancel our free will and we have no choice in the matter. That's not possible, because if he will do that, we are being deprived of free will. And if we are being deprived of free will, we stop being who we are as souls. And a soul can never stop being a soul. Do you follow my point? So we need to play out all those things, all those implications to make sense of the original word we are saying. Okay, God is omnipotent. So what do we mean by that? It's easy to, and I'm not saying you are doing that, but I've heard that sometimes it's easy to just invoke the idea more sentimentally without much philosophical rigor. And okay, we say this is the case, which are the implications of that? No. And in the implications, are there problems that need to be solved for us to make our premise strong? Because that's how our acharyas present any topic. No? They present a conclusion, and then they bring to the table all the potential arguments and problems to their idea, to deal with them. So their conclusion is clear, strong, established. So again, if we say, I mean, let me share with you, I think I did it in the past, I mean, with all of you, but specifically, I think it's a 7-step idea. Here it is, that I make in my book. This is a trailer for the book to be published after the book that is to be published. So it's a very exclusive appetizer I'm sharing with you. So 7-step. I hope the idea is clear. I will try to go through it quickly. First point, God cannot cease to be God. Okay, this will contradict his eternal and essential nature. Krishna cannot stop being Krishna. Again, that's not a limitation. That's not an insult to God's omnipotence. And God is love. So since God is love, and God cannot cease to be God, therefore God cannot cease to be love. Right? Love is not just one of God's qualities. Love is the core, the very core of who Krishna is. So God cannot stop to be God. God is love, therefore God cannot stop to be not only loving, but love. And love by nature is non-coercive. It cannot be forced. It has to be a voluntary decision. Real love always grants the freedom to choose. If it's imposed, it ceases to be love, becomes control. So let's keep that in mind. God is love. He cannot be something else. And the nature of love is non-coercive. Therefore, God cannot override human freedom without negating love itself. For love to remain love, and God is love, it must allow us to say no. We must be given the chance of rejecting Krishna, basically, which is what most of us have been doing for quite a long time. At least I speak for me. So Krishna cannot just interfere and cancel our free will and force us to love him or interfere and so on. Because again, if God were to negate love, he will violate the voluntary nature of the choice. He will cease to be love, and therefore he will cease to be God, which I call it an ontological impossibility. And therefore, when we speak about God being omnipotent, this is point 6, divine omnipotence must be redefined, not as the power to control, and Krishna can do anything and everything and cancel our free will and manipulate reality, but omnipotence must be redefined as the supreme force of uncontrolling love, because that's the nature of love. It's uncontrolling. It's not coercing. It's not manipulating. So in that light, my conclusion is that true omnipotence is not the capacity to do just anything, but as I put it in the book, the unwavering commitment to remain love in all circumstances. So anyhow, it's a long conversation. I'm sharing some thoughts just for us but I want to clarify, I'm not against the idea that God is omnipotent. I'm just against the idea of defining it in a way that contradicts all of his other qualities, especially his defining quality as love. So there are certain things that God cannot do, but that doesn't mean he's not omnipotent. Again, some philosophers or theologians will choose to say, yeah, that means he's not omnipotent if we define omnipotence as the capacity of doing anything and everything. Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's in the definition.
Again, so that's why before any discussion on this, like, let's define what we are talking about. What do you mean by omnipotence? What do you mean by omnipotence? What do we mean by... So we have to agree, because if not, we may be talking for hours, and each one has the different idea of what they're talking about.
Right.
And each one will be in a different conversation and never like get into actual communication with one another. So that's why I began my reply with, okay, what's omnipotence for me? And in which context I'm saying yes, no, to this, to that. So, but anyhow, I appreciate your bringing that topic to the table, because it still is a complex one, and it's a topic that many times in religious circles that has been avoided, or that has been, how to say, dealt with in a very like playing the mystery card too soon. No, oh, this happening, how to understand, oh, that's mystery, God works in very particular ways. Next question. And sometimes we need to sit and think as much as we can. It's not that we can figure it out reality just in our heads, but we have some head here above the neck. So we have to do something with that. And till we have to use all our faculties till they collapse. And then we can surrender more deeply to further revelation. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Yogamaya.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, so I'm just in case, I'm not planning to go to breakout rooms after every single question, because in some meetings we may have 8 questions and that will make longer rooms. So I will skip this one and we will go to Rasangi's question. And then I saw Divyangana raising her hand. And probably with those 2, we can go to breakout rooms so we can have some spaces in between, even if some other questions comes in between as well. So let's go with Rasangi now.
So Maharaj Dandavats. And I have a question about surrender. And I've been studying issues and tissues. And the question came to my mind about what am I supposed to surrender to Sri Guru? My mind, intelligence, ego, body, mind, spirit, my heart. What am I really being asked to surrender? Because I think it's been confusing. In the past, we were asked to give up a lot of our own thoughts, desires, free will, really, in order to be a devotee in good standing. And now I feel like I've gone a little rogue. I feel like I'm operating in a different way. And so it comes to my mind, well, what am I being? And the heart sounds like a good thing to surrender, but what does that look like? And yeah, what do we ask to surrender? We want to keep our intellect. We want to keep our mind. I know we want to use it in Krishna's service, but what is surrender really? What are we looking for to look like when we're surrendered? What does that look like? Thank you.
Thank you. Surrender ki jai. Yeah, omnipotence ki jai. Why not? So as we were talking with Yogamaya a minute ago, of course, my main point was like, okay, what's omnipotence? So now the theme is surrender. So before talking about surrender, what's surrender? Right? Because if we don't have any basic definition in place, we may be just understanding something very different one another. And maybe that has happened to many of us. And I'm not saying there's only one possible definition of surrender. I'm not saying that, but I'm also saying there are many wrong possible definitions of surrender. And many times we have got those ones as the official ones, unfortunately, right? So sometimes we need to revisit our Gaudiya glossary, right? Like all these basic words, surrender, love, guru. So, and the definition of them, the glossary, like one-liner definition, and say, I'm getting it right, or I'm having a whole toxic, dysfunctional glossary over there. And on the basis of those definitions I'm practicing, again, that can be very dangerous, right? And of course, you touch upon this word, surrender, which I will say has been one of the most consciously or unconsciously one of the most weaponized terms in our Gaudiya Vaishnava glossary. In the name of surrender, you are expected or even demanded to do certain things, and we surrendered. In that case, we brought the white flag. I surrender, like a form of defeat, right? So there's lots to say. Again, you are asking also what's the surrender? You spoke about mind, intellect, body. First thing that comes to mind is this famous verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Diksha Kale Bhaktakare Atma Samarpana, which says, at the time of Diksha, at the time of initiation, and because you started asking surrender to Guru, right? So it's connected to the principle of Guru. So at the time of initiation, which is basically, you could say, an official commitment in their relationship with someone representing the parampara. Diksha kale bhakta kare atma samarpana. The bhakta or the devotee, the aspirant, the disciple, atma sama arpana. So it says, made an sama arpana. Arpana means offering. Sama means complete. And atma can mean soul, but atma can mean mind, can mean body, can mean all the functions. So you could read that line. At the moment of initiation, you make of all your functions a complete offering at the feet of the Guru. So again, that's official definition. I know that can sound scary for some, and see many of you very serious at this moment. And for me, of course, that's official definition of what happens at the moments of surrender, of initiation. But for me, another important word is, an important question is, what should be happening before the moment of initiation for you to actually accept to be initiated by someone? Right? What's propelling you to surrender to a particular person? Right? So what's the preliminary chapter to the official moment of initiation, surrender, however you may like to call it? And that's what I try to bring, this idea that surrender ideally should be out of wonder, out of awe. And I feel irresistibly attracted to that. I cannot but surrender. That's the ideal way of surrender. Guru, as Srila Sridhar Maharaj will say, Guru is our own potential appearing in front of us. So a guru is a figure who gently mirrors back all that we can be in a very compassionate way. So that feels so compelling, so charming, so promising, so hopeful, that it becomes irresistible. So I surrender to that from a place of irresistibleness, right? So on that foundation, Diksha Kale Bhakta Kare Atma Samarpana, I made a complete offering of all my functions in that direction. But you have to have that preliminary experience in place, because if that's not in place, then I'm surrendering or getting initiated because I'm asking too much by my community. When are you getting initiated? Social pressure, need to fit in, whatever. No? Fear, intimidation. There's no awe and wonder, and you take that step. You become a disciple for the wrong reasons, let's put it that way. And I'm not condemning that. I'm not saying if some of you happen to do that on some level, that was useless and you lost your time and that didn't have any value. I'm not saying that. We always have time to acknowledge our shortcomings and to adjust them, whether in connection to that same person we got originally initiated or some other person, depending, each case is very unique. But again, real surrender has to be voluntary. No? If it helps, we have to qualify the word surrender with voluntary first. Voluntary surrender. Because sometimes we do not associate the two words together. It's not involuntary surrender, it's voluntary surrender. Another expression that Srila Sridhar Maharaj, I was exploring that these days, he refers to Jiva Goswami, referring to Krishna's Bhajaniya Guna Vishishta. So Guru is the representative of Krishna. Who is Krishna? Bhajaniya Guna Vishishta. He whose qualities are so attractive that one is irresistibly drawn in that direction. That's the meaning of Krishna, right? The all attractive, ideally. The all attractive means I cannot but be drawn in that direction. I'm giving myself, I attracted to surrender out of beauty, charm, truth, harmony, wonder. So that's Krishna. Bhajaniya Guna Vishishta. He out of whom Guna means qualities, Vishishta means very special. He who has such special qualities, Bhajaniya, that I'm inclined to engage in bhajan, give myself to that person because of the specialness of his qualities. I'm irresistibly drawn to God. And the Guru is a representative of that same principle. So I should have a similar epiphany in connection to the Guru. And on that foundation, yeah, we are recommended to surrender, but I will say at that point, you don't even need a recommendation. You are drawn, you are captured. And of course, sometimes after that, we may have days and days and struggles, and we may not live in a world of awe and wonder at every moment, but we may remind those moments, those epiphanies we had, and make some conscious effort to continue surrendering in a voluntary way, still in a conscious way. I mean, that surrender is voluntary and conscious doesn't mean that it will happen smoothly from a sofa. No, there will be some struggle, there will be some effort, there will be some battles outside of the comfort zone, but also there will be enough first-hand personal experience that is so undeniable and so overwhelming that even in the face of so many other things, I choose to surrender. I choose to trust, to give myself, to have hope. So, yeah, I will define, so you briefly touch upon surrender, Rasangi, as giving up. But I will define surrender just like give up that and give up that, because still for me, that's framing surrender in negative terms. Oh, surrender is about what do I have to give up that actually I'm not so willing to give up. Even if that's, but try to get my point. Okay, that may be necessary at some point. I may know, okay, this is not healthy for me. This way of thinking, this way of acting, I need to give up that. But I can only give up that as long as I first had some awesome, wonderful experience. Krishna says that in the Gita, param drishya nivartante. Prabhupada will translate that verse as the higher taste, right? You have a higher taste, you can let go of the lower taste. No? So you can surrender, if we want to translate that verse in terms of surrender, when you had a higher taste, a deeper experience that is irresistibly attractive, deep enough, awesome, wonderful, on the foundation of that experience, you can use your intelligence to know when to release, let go, make effort, sacrifice certain things for the sake of this higher interest that you have had an experience of. But if you have no experience of that, no clue what's that, you cannot force surrender on a person. That's violence. That's abuse. And those are the negative ideas of surrender sometimes we may understand. Again, I'm showing the white flag. I'm surrendering. I have no other option. It's not out of attraction and irresistibly I mean, I'm about to be killed. Don't kill me, please. I surrender. But that's not our surrender. Again, it may feel like a defeat for the ego, for the false self in certain situations. We can go through all that, but all that has to happen in the bigger picture of I'm being held by Krishna's love, by Krishna's protection, mercy, grace, but all the things that hold space and hold the bigger picture. And inside that, yeah, sometimes surrender may feel difficult, like a battle, like losing a battle for the false self, not for the real one. But if I had this bigger picture experience, I can understand that so-called defeat in a bigger picture, and that's not a defeat at all, actually. You follow my point? So that's what's coming now. I don't know if that makes any sense, Rasangi.
So I'm thinking that it's not that I feel like I'm forced to surrender or those things. I'm doing something wrong. It's the things that are dear to me, my own intelligence, my own creativity, that's maybe not focused on Krishna at the moment, not speaking Krishna Katha, other parts of myself that I value and I think I'm using in Krishna's service, that part of me still thinks I should be giving up because it doesn't follow the prescription that I was given in those old days. That's all.
Yeah, look, the word, I mean, we are words. No, these are words, surrender. And I've seen that someone posted a definition of the word surrender. For us, and it's fine, but the word for us in Sanskrit is Sharanagati. Sharanagati, and Sharanagati means the path, gati, of Sharanam, of taking shelter. So surrender is about taking shelter, no? Taking refuge, embracing God's mercy. That's the essence of surrender. It's described in 6 ways. Of course, we know maybe that verse, Anukulyasam Kalpavarti. We don't have time to go through that now. But Jiva Goswami says the angi of these 6 qualities, the center of these 6 qualities is Goptritve Paranam, which means to accept that Krishna is maintaining me. Again, it has a lot to do with Sharanagati, to take shelter and be maintained by Krishna. But Krishna means Krishna is a good guy, right? He's maintaining me through love, no? By his nourishing, by love, by shelter, so surrender. It has main aspect of surrender is that entering to the spirit of taking shelter, understanding our need for grace. I mean, that's necessary. It's a type of death for the false ego. It's humbling to understand I need grace. Doesn't necessarily I deserve grace, but I need it. And that grace is always available, and it's irreversible once I embrace it. So entering into that spirit, and again, it's a mood of living. It's a mood of practicing. No? And that's the foundation of bhakti, actually. That's very important. Bhakti is not about chanting 16 rounds, going to Mangalarti, or reading the Bhagavatam. It's about doing all those things with surrender. In this mood that I'm trying to explain. If you don't have that surrender, you can do all the stuff you want and bring all the numbers to the table. Krishna is not touched by that. He doesn't want, again, performance. He wants surrender because he's trying. That's how it works for him in a relationship, right? Surrender, giving it to each other. It's mutual. It's reciprocal, right? It's not us surrendering to Krishna and that's the end of the story. It's mutual and reciprocal, and Krishna took the first step. Don't forget that one. It's not like, oh, I have to surrender. Why me first? No, it's not you first. It's you second. Krishna kick-started the whole show from time without beginning. So, but that's important. Surrender has to be there. And I'm not saying that for anyone to feel bad. There are levels of surrender. It's not black and white. I'm surrender. I'm not surrender. There are so many degrees. But try to appreciate the importance of that mood. Now, Srila Siddhar Maharaj will say, devotion without surrender is imitation. And surrender is the substance of bhakti. Surrender is, and you may be not doing anything externally, but if you are surrendered, that in itself is seva. That in itself is an act that gives pleasure to Bhagavan. That's the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. Surrender. Sarva dharma parityajam amekam sharanam braja. Abandon all considerations, even religious considerations, Krishna says, all sense of dharma, and come to me alone. That's the new dharma. Take shelter in me. Take refuge in me exclusively. Trust that I will protect you. He's saying that so many times, right? Trust me, Krishna says. I'm not that bad of a guy. They say I'm an ocean of mercy. Right? So again, many times we need to reframe, reconfigure, redefine all these words. And part of the redefining is deconstructing. What surrender meant for me for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and maybe it didn't mean what it meant. And it will be difficult to accept that, but it's never as difficult as if I continue to live with a wrong idea about things. So better to go through that difficulty of realizing, okay, I got it wrong in this case, let's get it right. And let's redefine surrender, and let's embrace, let's not discard these words just because I've been traumatized by a misrepresentation and a misdefinition of them. Let's rediscover them, and let's conceive surrender in a way that is real. We are not creating our own ideas. They are deeply rooted in scripture. Out of awe, out of wonder, out of the irresistible qualities of the divine, that might take in shelter out of those experiences, out of those reasons, and trying to offer myself in the most sincere possible way, trying to acknowledge how I'm already being maintained by the unconditional love of the sweet absolute, I'm trying to remain in that space internally as much as I can, trying to remain in that space, whatever we are doing. Some days we may do better, we may do better, we may do worse, but at least we have the north, so to say. Okay, surrender. And then with that spirit of surrender, you can peel a potato and you have conquered Krishna's heart. Now you take away that surrender and you can offer him temples and millions of dollars and thousands of rounds. Krishna has fallen asleep. Oh. Because there's no inner substance there. Krishna is a substantial person. He doesn't care for, he's not interested in a superficial relationship with you. He's not trying to deceive you himself or yourself in a relationship. He wants it for real. He's the supreme truth. So anyhow, surrender is important. And therefore it's important to get it right. So again, and this applies to any other word we use. How can I relate to surrender in a way that is healthy? And as you say, Swasangi, in the chapter on radical personalism about guru and disciple, there is some section about surrender, which is surrender is not codependency, and surrender is not many things. I try to define what surrender is not many times. Part of the deconstruction of that word is by what the term is not. Okay, and in that process, we get clear what is not, so what it is. And we are open to rediscover surrender and a life of surrender, of joyful, healthy, happy surrender. Krishna says you should surrender, but he says also come Khartoum. You should do this in a very happy mood. So the two have to get, somehow we have to be able to put these two words together, happy and surrender. Maybe at present they seem like arch enemies. So we have to get to put them together. How can I surrender joyfully? What needs to take place? And that will be the prompt for our next breakthrough room, which will be the last. I thought we'll have time for more, but we're almost getting there. So we can make it 10 minutes, Bhakti-rasa, since it will be the last. And let's explore all together. How does healthy surrender look? And what do I need to do in my own life to reach to that place? What things may I need to deconstruct, put into place, rediscover? So you're all back. I'm seeing your faces. Yeah, still surviving, happy. And I hope you had a deep sharing on talking on surrender and such important topics, and continue to foster our interconnectedness as a sangha, as a family, as individuals as well. So thank you so much for lending yourself and being willing to these experiments that I like to do with all of you. And it's an experiment through which we all can, hopefully we can continue growing in communion. So deep gratitude. And next Saturday, I'm announcing it in advance, I won't be able to be present for the call. I will be in a different place and there's not Wi-Fi. So we will take one break for the next weekend to get a little bit of longing in separation and missing each other. That's a good ingredient sometimes to bring. So we'll be meeting each other for our next satsang in 2 weeks. So that will be Saturday 21st, if my memory is not failing. So thank you so much to all for coming. Sri Satchidananda Gaur Hari Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Prabhu Ki Jai. Samavit Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanand Hari.